Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here today with another Anabolic Q&A for you. I've got some good questions up today. I have a question about the approach to diet and training in the post-show rebound phase. I have another question about successful contest prep without using GH. Can you get by with it with just fat burners alone? Do you really need GH? I have another question here about how you can prevent leg size loss during contest prep from cardio. Strategies for a 60-year-old competitor who's looking to get their pro card. Should PED users proactively take a statin and blood pressure meds even if their biomarkers are in line? And I have a bunch of other questions as well. Most of these questions came from my school Anabolic bodybuilding members community site. Folks, if you want to join it, it's $29 a month. It's super cheap. You get priority questions answered on the Q&As that I do. I also check the school member site throughout the week and answer questions over there. So if you just want to ask me questions, we have a great group of people, over 100 members over there currently, and it's a fantastic group of human beings. We also have some coursework up over there on the blast and cruise methodology, insulin, other things, the carb cycling diet, a bunch of other stuff. It's a good group of people. I like everybody that's over there on the group. It's only $29 a month if you want access to ask me questions and get your questions on these Q&As and your support the YouTube channel and what I do. That's all I've got for you on that. Let's get into the questions in just 1 second. We got a bunch of cardio questions on this Q&A. It's fat loss season. People are asking questions about cardio. First question I got up is from my client, Daryl G. He's asking, is off-season cardio handled in the same manner as contest prep cardio, or it's different? So this is the way I look at it, and I've discussed this before. There's really two purposes for cardio in our sport. We have the contest prep phase or diet phase, whatever you want to call it, where we are trying to burn fat. And cardio during that phase is purely about energy expenditure. We're just trying to increase energy expenditure and create a net negative energy balance. So we are burning fat and losing body fat. What I found the best cardio for that is low intensity, steady state cardio that has the best, balance of fat burning and preventing muscle loss. Really, the way I look at it during contest prep, we have a few jobs. We want to burn fat. We want to get fat free. We want to make sure that we don't lose muscle. That's two things. And we want to keep ourselves from getting hurt. Really that simple. You're not going to gain muscle on contest prep. Very uncommon for people to gain muscle in a caloric deficit. It does happen on occasion, but it's very uncommon, something that should not be expected. The way I look at it, it's a gift. I've been doing bodybuilding for 30 years, and I've been coaching people off and on during that period of time. And I can count the number of times I've seen people gain on prep during a cut on one hand. And I've worked with hundreds of people. It's only happened for me on one contest prep, and that was last year, where I actually ended up on stage at around the same weight I started prep, or maybe even a little bit heavier. But it's very uncommon. You have to have a perfect set of circumstances for that to happen. So let's just rule that out. In the off season, the cardio, really the purpose is cardiovascular health. We're trying to keep our heart healthy as we push the food up, as we increase our body weight. We want to help performance in the gym. So during the off season, and this is kind of a trick that I learned from my coach, Justin Harris, HIIT cardio is a great alternative for increasing cardiovascular output and capacity. We want to do, and what I like to do, I like the cycle or the elliptical, and what I will do is 20-second sprints, 40 seconds of just kind of easy going when I do cardio. You folks know I don't like cardio. But in theory, this makes more sense because we're going to get our heart rate up higher. We're going to increase our capacity for cardiovascular output, and this is going to help our heart health. Now, if you want to mix in some walks and some low intensity steady state, that's fine. But that's not really going to provide us the cardiovascular benefits that we're going to get from something that's a little more intense, where we get our pulse up and actually give our heart some work. And that HIIT cardio is going to help with your capacity on things like doing squats, deadlifts, any heavy, very demanding exercise. You'll notice, anybody who's gotten big in the off season, as your weight increases, as you get bigger, your capacity to be able to do heavy exercise sometimes just gets limited by your cardiovascular output. You're huffing and puffing, taking deep breaths when you're 270, 280 pounds after a set of squats, and you got to sit down for 10 minutes to recover. That's not going to be beneficial for your progress. So really short spurts of HIIT cardio in the off season, longer duration steady state for contest prep, lower intensity for fat loss. It's really that simple. All right, next question here is from Aaron G. Would 10 to 20 repetitions for deadlift be good for mass phase, or is the rep range better suited for legs, calves, and forearms? Sort of my approach has always been for the heavier compound movements. I really don't do deadlifts, squats, or bench presses anymore. I think as you progress into being an advanced bodybuilder, you need to take a hard look at it and see if the risk versus reward ratio is really there. I decided that it's just not worth the risk to do those. But when I was doing heavy compound movements, I would keep the rep ranges lower. I found that to be more beneficial, somewhere in that 6 to 10 rep range. I don't know who the fuck wants to do 10 to 20 reps on deadlifts. That sounds terrible to me. My lower back hurts just thinking about it. I'm sure you could get some hypertrophy from it or some sort of benefit from it, but I would not want to do that. That's going to be a huge amount of energy expenditure. And if you're going balls out and doing a 20 rep set on deadlifts, what gas are you going to have left in the tank for the rest of your workout to do your rowing exercises and the other movements that you do in a typical back workout? I am going to guess nothing. The gas tank's going to be empty. There's not going to be anything left. So I would say stay away from that altogether. I would not do it. I would also carefully evaluate if deadlifts are the best option for you as well. I think for bodybuilding, probably something like rack pulls if you're going to do a hip hinge movement, or RDLs, stiff-legged deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, things like that are probably going to be a better option for bodybuilding purposes. I think from the floor deadlifts or sumo deadlifts are not really when we look at the cost versus benefit ratio on them, they're not really that great for bodybuilding purposes. Now, for powerlifting, obviously you're going to have to do them. For strength athletes, they are a requirement. Next question here is from John. John asked, thoughts on traveling in an airplane with gear? Would it be better to take a max dose before leaving a trip and take a week off of GH, or just take your chances and fly with the goods in check? I personally wouldn't take the risk. To me, it's not worth it. I don't want to be in the airport with my family and be in handcuffs and security. Probably not worth the risk. I just usually either take a week off from the gear or just take a little extra before I leave. Now, I do know guys that travel. They put them in their check bag, never have problems. From what I understand, I don't think the guys at TSA really care much about a little growth hormone or testosterone unless they have some sort of agenda. I think they're more likely just looking for bombs and other contraband that might be dangerous on the flight. I would probably not take the chance. To me, unless you're, a competitor going into a show or something, then you probably don't have a choice. But otherwise, I just wouldn't take the chance. I just take off when I'm traveling. If I have a vacation or something, I just spend the time with my family. A week off of gear is not going to kill me. The half-life on most of the stuff, it's going to be in your system for weeks. You're not going to crash from 1 week of no injections. I get it's not ideal, but you're not going to lose everything in a week. That's my 2 cents. All right, next question here is from Chris Gelball. Chris asked, does training change on a cruise in an attempt for your peak health or before entering an off-season push? I keep my training the same, and I have a few reasons for this. I'm not trying to set PRs on the cruise phase, but I often find that my strength does increase when I'm on the cruise. It's a fascinating thing. And I've talked to other pros and other people who reported the same thing. I don't know if it's just because you're giving your CNS a break or it's the toxic load of the drugs. I really, I'm just speculating here. This is just all bro sciencey shit. There's no science behind it, but I have noticed that my strength will go up and improve when I'm on cruise. Body composition tends to decline, but I think a mistake that a lot of guys make is they pull the gear out or they go down to TRT and then they lose the motivation to train and follow their diet. And they say that, well, you can't maintain what you look like on just TRT in training. And it's not because of their doses are lower. It's because they've just started training like, little bees, and they have stopped following a structured diet, and then their results reflect that. It's really just that simple. I think if you're able to push, you don't need to, like I said, go out and set records, but just trying to maintain, maybe pull the volume back a little bit. Sometimes I'll do that if recovery is in question, and I'll just do the same thing that I did when I was on my push and try to maintain my gains that I made from my push. And then when I start my next push phase coming out of the cruise, I am not spending the first 6 weeks trying to recover all the shit that I lost during the cruise. I'm actually at a break-even point, and I can push higher. So that's my thought processes. Paul Robinson asked about the post-diet, post-cut, post-show rebound. What is your favorite approach to diet training immediately following a deep cut phase post-show for the initial first 2 weeks and then for the remainder of 6 to 8 weeks of the rebound phase leading into the recovery period? So this is what I've seen post-cut. And this is where guys will make or break their off season. If you can keep yourself disciplined in that first 2 weeks with your food, there's going to be a huge temptation to eat. I know a lot of dudes that come out. I'll see them all the time. I can almost predict the guys that are going to lose their shit post show and gain like 40 pounds in 2 weeks. I've had more than a handful of guys do it, and they'll just disappear. I won't see check-ins, and then they report back in a couple weeks later, and their ankles look like watermelons, and they've blown up and put on 40, 50 pounds. Most of it's water from eating like shit. And then you end up fucking your whole off season up and all your progress for the year because of 2 weeks of binge eating. So it's really important to keep your food locked in post-show. I'm starting to wonder now if running a GLP-1 post-show just to help with the appetite suppression might be smart, because there is this huge just rebound in hunger that happens. Ghrelin always wins. Ghrelin is undefeated. When it comes, I'm a guy that has pretty fucking strong willpower when I put my mind to something. And I remember saying, there's a show I did one time. I'm like, I'm going to be locked in and ready to go post show. And then I went to Costco and smashed an entire jumbo size thing of cookies. I think there were 36 cookies. I remember doing the math on it, and it was over 20,000 calories or something like that. in one, that I smashed in 30 minutes post show. Then you wonder why you're all swollen up. So I would say immediately post-show, you got to get through that first couple weeks where the hunger is going to be terrible. What I like to do diet-wise to keep people sane is I will just throw some high carbohydrates at things, maybe push up the protein a little bit to keep them full, keep the fats lower, try to keep, they're going to eat regardless. People usually are just going to lose their mind. I know. I understand the logic of reverse dieting, and I know a lot of coaches do that and have some success with it, but I just find that most people fail at it. They just are incapable of doing it. Slowly reversing out, and most people just don't have the discipline or the ability to control the urge to eat. So we might, if we're going to fuck up, rather than fuck up, let's just fill up on some good food post show. Eat a lot of meat, eat a lot of rice. Just fill up on there's only so much damage you can do from eating chicken and beef and rice. You're not gonna make yourself obese eating that post show. So usually what I'll do is run multiple high days. And I'll have guys check back in 3 to 4 days post diet. We'll see what water retention looks like. Some dudes just have massive water rebounds after they've been on a diet phase for a long time. And we may need to be a little more conservative with things then, but most guys handle it okay. I would say like 90% of people look okay as long as they've been disciplined with the diet. Usually the guys that have the big water rebound are the guys that are out smashing pizza and cookies and donuts and all the trash food that contributes nothing to your physique. So if you can just fill up on good food, I think you're going to be pretty safe. And I like to get aggressive with the food post-diet. And you have a golden opportunity in that 6 to 8 week window to put on some serious size. It doesn't work 100% of the time. I know I have had some guys I work with that it just doesn't happen. And I've had post-show periods where I've had massive rebounds where I've just gotten huge and strong and filled out. And then I've had other shows where nothing happens. It's really hard to predict. I think sometimes the body just needs to breathe. So you really just have to see. I will say this, training, you got to be really careful with training coming out of a cut, especially if you've been running a lot of, AIs and things that are going to, Winstrol, shit like that, that's going to dry you out, because what's going to happen is when you start eating that food, you're going to replenish your glycogen and you're going to have a rapid increase in strength right away. You're going to have more water in your body. You're more leverage in your lifts just from filling back out, and strength is going to rocket up quickly. But your joints are all beat up and dried out from the AIs and the Winstrol. I've seen so many dudes tear muscles that first couple weeks post-show. So usually I sort of ease the training back up. And just the food alone and doing pump workouts post-show the first couple weeks is going to be enough to put a bunch of size on and blow back up. So I'll just do a little more volume. I'll keep the weights a little more conservative. I won't go to absolute failure and then slowly start increasing things heading into my off season. And I find the wheels kind of fall off the rebound phase after about 6 to 8 weeks. You have this rapid regain in body weight, and most of the time you can keep yourself pretty lean. I know the science-based people are going to say that's impossible. I've seen it happen 100 fucking times. Hundreds of times. Where dudes will put on 20, 30, 40 pounds in very little, minimal body fat during that rebound phase if they manage it correctly. Now, once again, doesn't happen 100% of the time. And a lot of times when it doesn't, it's because you fucked up. And if you fuck up that first 2 weeks, you're screwed, man. We basically have to go back into a diet and get the water off, get you cleaned up, and you're pushing the reset button and doing it all over again. You're making things worse for you when you do that. I've had tons of clients do it. I've done it to myself before. You just set yourself back. So that's the big thing, is just be disciplined with the food. Don't fuck up post-show. All right, next question here is from Jake Maurer. Jake, I think I got it right this time. Let me know. I fucked it up on the last one. What are some strategies to keep cardio from impacting leg day recovery while in prep? Even though I ease up on cardio the day of leg days, a rest day, or after, I am still having issues recovering. Probably the lower leg training volume. Thanks, Paul. P.S. The last name rhymes with power. Thanks for letting me know. So I got it right now. It's Power. Maurer. I think I got it right, Jake. So here's my strategy that I employ. You guys know that I do carb cycling. I try to sync my high carbohydrate day up on contest prep. If for no other reason than leg day is the highest energy demand day, I am going to do my high carbohydrate day per week on contest prep on my leg day. So I have plenty of fuel in the gas tank to get through that leg training. I also, another strategy I employ on leg day, the high day, is I do no cardio on high days, and I pull all the fat burners and stimulants on the high days during contest prep. So we have 6 days a week that we're doing fat burning, and we have 1 day a week where we're using it for recovery and to replenish glycogen. And there's no reason to take fat burners or do cardio on a day where you're in a caloric surplus, right? Because we're going to be in a surplus on that high carbohydrate day. So it makes zero sense to do, cardio is not going to really help us on that day. And taking fat burners is not really going to help us on that day. So why not let's yank that out, use the other 6 days a week for the fat burning, use that as a rest and recovery day, and we can put our most difficult training day in on that day and just reap multiple benefits. I don't know why I really, maybe I'm the first one I don't know. I haven't heard of anybody else doing this. And I started doing this the last couple of years in my own preps because I have a hard time hanging on to leg size during contest prep. And it just made so much more sense for me to do this way. And then I get to the point where I can't sleep from all the fat burners and the stimulants, and my CNS is just on overdrive. And you get a great night of sleep from your hard leg training and from having all the carbohydrates in. You give your body a break, and it keeps your legs fuller through the contest prep. I found this strategy works really, really well. All right, next question here is from Joe D. Joe asks, is it possible to have a contest prep without using GH, especially when incorporating compounds like Clen and other fat burners? HGH is HGH essential for achieving peak conditioning and fullness? Well, the answer is simple. You can go back and look at the history of bodybuilding, what physiques look like before HGH and what they look like after. Pretty much when Dorian Yates started winning Olympia titles is when dudes started using growth hormone. Like everybody was blasting growth hormone at that point. I'm sure there were some people experimenting with it beforehand, but you can see the massive leap forward in fullness and hardness and size. I don't know, around that 1992, 1993 time period in bodybuilding, when we went from, people like Lee Haney and those guys that were around in the 80s or even earlier 80s, like Tom Platz and Mike Mentzer and those dudes. And then we took the massive step forward in size and conditioning to Dorian Yates, Nasser, Kevin Levrone, Paul Dillett. I mean, there was a huge leap forward at that point. So the only thing that really changed at that point in time, I think guys, well, before then, I know guys used to cycle on and off, and the guys in the 90s, from what I've heard, they'll tell you otherwise. Some of the dudes will tell you otherwise, but they went to blast and cruise, then they weren't fucking coming off. And if they did, it was just for 6 weeks, or they were running. Their version of coming off was, I heard a story about a former Mr. Olympia, and his coming off was 500 tests and 300 EQ. That's what he meant by coming off. That was coming off. So just so you know. But I would say, look, that's the look you're going to achieve. Now, I have dudes on contest prep sometimes where I will yank the GH towards the end just because of water retention. Some dudes really hold a lot of water on GH. But what I found is when you pull the GH out, you lose fullness too. So it's this trade-off between hardness, conditioning, and fullness. I usually like to leave GH in all the way up until, about 7 days out. Sometimes I'll even run it up right up to a couple days out, depending on what levers we need to pull for fullness. I would say if you want to compete at a high level in today's bodybuilding, that GH is a necessity. You're not going to look like everybody else that's on stage. If I were using GH and you weren't, I am likely going to beat you. I'm just saying. I don't mean to be cruel about it, but that's, look, I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love Tom Platz. I love those guys from the 70s, Frank Zane. but they would get absolutely smashed on stage standing next to Phil Heath or Dorian Yates, even back to Dorian Yates or Jay Cutler. Those guys would look like regional show winners compared to those dudes if you put them on stage next to each other. So if you want to compete, you want to have that modern physique look, you're probably going to have to run growth hormone. Now, if you don't give a fuck, if you're just trying to look good, be healthy, look like kind of a 70s or 80s bodybuilder, that's what you're going to get by not running GH with your contest prep. All right, next question here is from Scott Brinkman. I started competing not so long ago as an over 60s competitor. I did 7 shows back to back. Holy fuck, Scott. I'm now wanting to go to the next level and run an IFBB Pro card. I'm thinking I'll probably need to put on some more muscle mass to do so. I have no problem getting shredded. I'm planning on entering 1 show per year to stay in practice and being on stage and still give my body a chance to grow. Does that sound like a good strategy to you, Paul? Yeah, it's funny, I was just talking with a friend today about this, and this is what I have noticed with Masters competitors. When you do multiple shows in a year as a Masters competitor, usually the subsequent shows you don't look as good. I found that you get 1, maybe 2 good peaks per year, and you need some time between those peaks. And it's really hard to make progress as an older guy. We need times for our body to rest and recover. And really the most stressful time, to me, the highest risk time as a bodybuilder is contest prep. We're putting the gas pedal down to the floor. Rest sucks. That's when we're taking the harshest compounds. That's when we are pushing our bodies the hardest with cardio and extra posing and extra training, not sleeping. It is a lot of fatigue to put on an old body, and you're just not going to grow if you're doing that. If you're doing 7 shows back to back, you're giving yourself 0 opportunity to recover and to progress forward. You just are. Now, with that said, there is a balance. I think running the multi-year off-season that I see a lot of younger guys do is also not beneficial. You do hit a point where you've extended off-seasons for so long where you just start to get fatter. There's only so long you can push a caloric surplus before you start getting fatter. I would say for a Masters competitor, 2 shows per year is probably the maximum I would do. And I would have them spaced out many months apart, 5-6 months apart. If you can run back-to-back shows, I would, maybe that would be okay. I had given some strong consideration last year to doing Master Worlds, which was 5 weeks after my pro card win, and part of me wishes I had, and part of me I'm glad I didn't. I can tell you, when you push hard and you give your all to a show as an older guy, especially when you get over 50, it's hell on your body, and you need time to recover post show, and then you need time to also make progress. And progress is really difficult for us to begin with. So you need that break. You need that break programmed in. So I would definitely say once per year, especially as an over 60s competitor, maximum twice. I would not do more than twice. I just don't think you're going to help yourself by doing anything more than that. That would be my strategy, and then try to put on a little bit of size if you can. It is still possible for guys that are over 60. I've had some guys do it. All right, next question I have here is from Socho1094. Shoko, sorry, I botched that. Shoko is a regular commenter on the YouTube channel. Do you think gear users who have a cholesterol and blood pressure towards the higher end of normal, like LDL 100, BP that's 130 over 80-ish, should be on low-dose meds? Would they do more harm than good? For example, taking a low-dose telmisartan, ezetimibe, rosuvastatin, etc. It's probably unnecessary. Here's my thing. If you don't need to take extra drugs, don't take extra drugs. It's really that simple. I would work with your medical doctor, see what your medical doctor would say. I do know this. I'm seeing a certified lipidologist now because I have dyslipidemia genetically. And from what I understand, I'm talking to this lipidologist, and, I know all the carnivore and keto bros are going to come out of the woodwork and say that there's no science behind this, that having an LDL below 80 is ideal if you don't want to have a fucking heart attack. Now, that's not to say that everybody with a higher LDL is going to have a heart attack, but it's certainly a very well documented and correlated risk factor for cardiovascular disease. But this comes with a caveat. I look at hundreds of blood panels annually from dudes that do blood work consults with me. If you want to book a consult, you can grab a consult. I do tons of these. I do multiple weekly. I almost never see dudes that have LDL under 100. Now, retatrutide seems to be changing that. The guys that are running retatrutide, I have seen radical improvement in lipids, and you get the extra benefit of increased insulin sensitivity and lowered triglycerides, improved liver markers, or just a bunch of lowered C-reactive protein, lowered A1C. And I wonder, and this is something I am doing for myself and considering for myself, if having maybe a low-dose retatrutide in the mix could replace all of these other medicines that we are using, such as BP meds, cholesterol meds. I just have seen everything improve while on retatrutide. It's just anecdote. Once again, no scientific studies. Even though the clinical trial did show, sorry, I've got acid reflux. Even though the clinical trials did show some pretty significant results in improvement in lipid profiles, reduction in visceral fat, reduction in liver fat accumulation and elimination of that, improved A1C. I speculate that maybe it would be a good adjunct therapy for an off-season bodybuilder and to help mitigate some of the lipid skewing that we see from PEDs, which does happen. All right, last question here. I'm probably going to slaughter this name. Is from Milanjovic 5570. What are some common mistakes for carb cycling for fat loss? The biggest mistake I see with carb cycling that guys make is just eating too much fucking fat with the high carbohydrate day. I don't know what it is and why dudes think that eating high fat foods are going to contribute something on the high carbohydrate day. I feel like they feel like they need to refuel the saturated fats. Just logically thinking about this, if your body is going to prioritize glucose as an energy source, and you are taking in a bunch of carbohydrates, which is going to put you in a high insulin state, which is going to increase nutrient storage. In our situation, glucose primarily is going to get stored as glycogen when we have a high insulin state. Amino acids are going to get shuttled largely to the muscle tissue. It's really difficult for the body to convert. There's multiple steps. We can. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it's pretty much, protein's pretty much a free pass as far as fat storage goes. What do you think is going to happen to any extra fats that you eat on that high carbohydrate day when you have a high insulin state and additional glucose is present? That high fat diet is those extra fats are just going to get stored as adipose. So with the carb cycling, for it to work effectively and we do the high carbohydrate day, we want to keep the fats as close as humanly possible to zero as we can. So I run very low fat protein sources: egg whites, white fish, protein powder. Chicken breast is going to have a little more fat in it than those do. So, and a lot of times what I'll do is even lower the protein down pretty significantly on the high day. I laugh because the sugar diet people now are doing low protein, high glucose. Now, I don't go zero protein. I don't know if that's going to lead to best outcomes for your physique, but we're experimenting with it now. The sugar diet has definitely made me wonder if maybe it wouldn't make sense to just, keep protein low on the high day and just make it a glycogen replenishment day. I already do that. Usually I'll cut the protein by a third on the high days. In some cases, maybe even half, keep the protein very low. Carbohydrates are going to be protein sparing because when you're in an insulin state, a high insulin state, it's going to increase mTOR, lower AMPK. Proteins are going to be spared. Gluconeogenesis is going to be suppressed. So the risk of burning amino acids as glucose or converting them to glucose through gluconeogenesis is going to be pretty much non-existent. So you really don't need a lot of protein. Your body's not going to be breaking down its own protein structures, aka muscle, for glucose on those high carbohydrate days. So I would say that is the biggest mistake that I see people make, is too much fat on the high carbohydrate day. Also, it seems to be that people are very afraid of taking the carbohydrates high enough to get any sort of benefit from them. I see guys thinking, well, they just sort of dip their toe in the pool. They do like maybe half of what I would normally do. I'll take, bare minimum for me would be 3 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. So if you're a 200-pound dude, like a minimum for a high day is going to be 600 grams of carbs, probably more like 4 times your body weight, or even up to 5. I'll keep getting aggressive with that high day and pushing it up as much as I possibly can to see what I can get away with. And I find that as I do that metabolic adaptation happens and we increase metabolism and we have increased glycogen synthesis, and I generally don't see any additional fat storage from it, because we have a pretty huge capacity to store glycogen as largely muscled men. Now, if you're smaller, you can't do as much. For a big dude, we can do a lot. I've gone as high as 2,000 grams of carbs on high days going into my contest last year. And I didn't get fat, clearly. One was super lean on stage, 5% body fat, and shredded. So just things to keep in mind. Keep the fats as low as humanly possible on the high carbohydrate days. Probably pull the protein down a bit. Limit it to 1 high carb day a day. That's another mistake I see guys make. They think they need more. They worry about getting flat. Some dudes worry about getting flat. They think they need cheat meals too. Now, I'm not, I do program in cheat meals at the end of the high day for my clients. It's more for psychological reasons. In an ideal world, physiologically, we would probably just avoid that cheat altogether and just do more carbs. So those are the things. You don't need a burger and fries. You don't need pizza physiologically. You might psychologically need it or need that break, which I understand can help keep you compliant the rest of the week on your diet. So I do allow it up to a certain point. Anyway, that's all I got on that one. All right, folks, that's it on this Anabolic Q&A. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I appreciate each and every one of you. Your support means a lot to me. Even the dudes that are the haters, I love you too. You need a hug more than anybody else. We love you too, bro. I don't know what happened to you to make you so angry that you got to slam people in the comments section, but I feel you. Much love for you. Take care, guys. I'll see you on the next episode. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.